us going here. Please.
And you are live.
All right, I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Board of Finance, Wednesday, March 16th. We'll open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get into the meeting, I'm going to make a couple statements. One, with the tax assessor yesterday when I talked about Bethel, it's not a matter of believing the number, it's a matter of we can't verify the number. It's not in the line items, it's not something we can go back to and verify. And we published the data in a public document. The numbers that I put out there all tie back to line item, budget line items. So any number that I had put in my graphs all tie back to a specific budget line item designated to it. That doesn't mean the assessor was wrong. That doesn't mean the assessor got bad data. It just means we can't verify. And I apologize too if it came off as it was stated as it was misinformation or not true. We just can't verify if someone calls up another town and says, how much money do you make? And that person says, well, I make $92,000, that we can verify that number. Bethel, I've spoken with the Board of Finance chairman, or Ricky has. They don't publish this data unless you specifically FOI it. This data is not available to anybody on any record that you can get documents. So it's just hard not to verify it. So again, the angst was these numbers are out there, but yet we can't verify what they really are. So I apologize to the assessor. It wasn't meant that way. It was just meant as in we just can't verify this. The town clerk, I'll make an apology to as well. I always pick on the town clerk's salary, but it's not the salary. It's the easiest one to track across line items. Every town has a town clerk. It's a pretty distinct definition of a job, so you can take that out of the line item budgets. I'll also disclose that all the information that I get, that I put out there, is strictly from other towns' budgets line items. They strictly call it out. Newtown puts it, every employee puts down their salary, their position, full-time, part-time. So the numbers that I'm talking about all come from verifiable sources that you can say absolutely a line item. Now, does that mean that line item contains everything? No, but I just want to clear it up that, again, the assessor, I think, I had a great conversation with her a couple days ago. She taught me a lot about comping and assessing. Her knowledge of the department is awesome. She walked me through the Four Corners area because I didn't understand it. So it's just a matter of the verification of the numbers if we present them. And we presented the number, and there's no way to tie it back that I know of. And again, like I said, the town clerk, I think that department runs awesome. But it's the easiest salary to say. Everybody seems to have a town clerk, so it's one that you could say town clerk in Newtown, town clerk in Southbury, town clerk in Woodbury. Because other towns, sometimes these job titles merge too, so it's difficult to nail it down. So I want to make sure that I think they do a great job. In fact, I thought her presentation was one of the best that we saw last night, the town clerk's presentation. So I'd like to clear that up, and now we'll open to public comment.
Wow, I'm up. I thought I was going to be here all night.
No, we do it front and back. You'll get 2 X at the
All right,
apple.
I can get this over with. Okay, so this kind of pertains a little bit to last night.
State your name, please,
Oh,
and
sorry.
address.
I'm used to this. Fern Svenyak and 112 Obtuse Road South. I'm speaking, I guess, you know, I had the opportunity here. I couldn't get on the docket because it was a 24-hour notice, and then I was going to come tomorrow night, but then I missed that one because you were going to have it and then would not have it. So I'm here. And if I go over, please stop me. I will come back tomorrow and finish. But I do want to just want to deal with what happened last night, and from my perspectives, just so you know where I'm coming from. So first of all, I would like to, and I wrote this down because I really want to make sure I say everything. Otherwise, I usually do pretty good. But anyway, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you, and I'd also like to thank you for all the work you do. I know you guys work really hard, and I've been watching all the budget meetings, and you guys are doing a great job. In the 8 years I've been the HR director, I have never once been invited nor asked to attend a Board of Finance budget meeting. However, after watching the meeting last night, I felt there was a necessity for me to be here tonight. I put this in writing because, like I told you, I want to make sure I try to address all the issues that was discussed last night. First of all, the employees working for the town are in fact the best group of hardworking and dedicated people we have had in my 8 years here. Your department heads, directors are without a doubt the best in their fields. The reason why you're hearing department heads saying that they're underpaid or understaffed is because for the very first time, they've had the opportunity to do so. The spreadsheet that Glenn prepared for the department heads to use in their budget presentations now gave them that opportunity, something they have never been able to do before. I, in fact, have been hearing about employees being underpaid and understaffed for 8 years. I think it's pretty common in almost every place you work. You kept asking last night, Glenn, what was the root of the problem? Where was this coming from? It's because you opened the door for the department heads to speak up. Last night, you accused them of making numbers up. Do you have any idea of the impact the employees that had on them? You basically accused people of lying and that they were not doing the work necessary to provide that information. Department heads were asked to follow a format and asked to indicate their concerns and their issues. Instead of listening and trying to understand them, you shut them down. You didn't want to hear it or entertain it. According to our rules and regulations, and we do have policies, rules, and regulations, salary increases for non-union employees are to be proposed during the preparation of their budgets. We were never allowed to do that. We were instructed not to increase the salary line. In fact, it wasn't even possible to do it in the spreadsheet we were given. It was actually where we couldn't put numbers in, thereby not allowing department heads to even ask for adjustments in their wages. Really, how fair is that? I've looked at other towns, reached out to peers and CCM for comparisons regarding our salaries, and yes, in some areas we are lower, and others close, and in some we're higher. And although we're scheduled to work 35 hours a week, there is not one supervisor, director that does. Most work over 40 hours. And every time, Glenn, you said that, you insulted every one of them. You as the Board of Finance are not necessarily privy to what each department head's responsibility is, or the amount of time that is spent in doing their job. Yes, you see Marcia, because she's right in front of you. But it's unfair to question that others are not putting in the same hours and effort. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. Is someone new coming in going to want to change things? Absolutely. And we want that. We encourage that. Each department head is responsible for their department and how their department runs. Yes, they report directly to the first selectman, but each department head is responsible for their own policies and procedures for running their department. Each department is different and has a different way of processing and organizing the ways things need to be accomplished. It is their responsibility to make sure their employees are trained and you're cross-trained. You can stop me if you want. These department heads get the job done in the best way that is right for their department, their people, and the residents of Brookfield. They're always looking for ways to improve. And yes, each department does have a procedure manual, which each department head uses as a guideline. When it comes to union employees, so I kind of have to school you a little bit on the union employees, they pay a union to represent them, which representation is to bargain for their wages and their benefits. Do I feel that we could be paying our union employees more? Yes, in certain positions. But when this was brought to the previous administration during negotiations, it was shut down. Percentage increases were based on counsel or attorney advice, and his recommendations are based on other contract negotiations in the same bargaining units and in towns in our area. We just don't pick numbers out of the sky. In general, people here are happy, or at least they were until last night. But I see that if we do not pay, appreciate, and take care of our employees, we run into a chance of potential turnover and will likely have to hire new candidates at a higher rate. Since I have been here, we have never, and I've been here 8 years, replaced any non-union employee for the same exact money that that person left. It's just not happening. Like I said in my report, we have been fortunate in the past of a low turnover rate. However, the tide is changing, and the market is paying people with experience more, because in the municipal world, which is definitely not the corporate world, It is not easy to replace the people with the specific skills necessary to do these jobs. Each position is very unique in its own way. Although everyone is replaceable, I will admit to that, in specific fields, and we do have many of them, it's not necessarily the case. Also, you may not be aware of this, but when you talk about restructuring, eliminating staff when it comes to union employees, it's almost impossible to do so. You have to be able to justify the reason behind that move, and then potentially pay the other employees more for taking on added responsibilities. This is also something that has to be negotiated and agreed upon by the unions. It's so easy for you to look from the outside in when you actually really don't know what goes on in the building. The misconception from outside, and trust me, I hear it all the time, is that we have cake jobs, work 35 hours, have off every holiday, and great benefits. And although this may look true on paper, please know that these employees work hard and actually care about those jobs and responsibilities. They're people, and most importantly, the people of this town, something I personally think adds more value than you could possibly realize. My recommendation for a salary survey is something I've wanted for many years. However, what I didn't want to happen was to do one and then not make it right. This salary survey, if done properly, would also give us a range from within which we can hire people in each position, so that if we hire someone with experience, we could have some flexibility in paying them for their work, not necessarily what the person before them made, or in the alternative, less if they have less experience. The worst thing that can happen from the salary survey is for people to find out that they are being underpaid and do nothing about it. The best thing would be to show people that either they are being compensated fairly, or if not, we make it right. Our non-union employees do not have a voice, and what we want to avoid is them unionizing, or even worse, leaving. Glenn, you said some inappropriate things last night regarding the employees and made false accusations regarding their newly found concerns about wages. I spent most of my morning putting out those fires. I work very hard in providing a positive work environment and providing a place where people want to come to work. The behavior last night was uncalled for. Our employees are being recruited because they do have the knowledge, the skill set, the experience that other towns are looking for. I would ask that in the future, when you speak about specific employees, you do that in executive session. And most importantly, just ask me to attend the meeting. I'd be more than happy to discuss them, since I truly am the one that can answer your concerns, your questions relative to employees, wages, and unions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. I don't normally address, but I will address, because I did apologize for the few points, but I gotta tell you, I never once said they weren't working the hours, so to say that in public, totally wrong on your part. If you wanna call it out, we're gonna call it out now, we're gonna have it. Two, policies and procedures in each department, they all have their own, but why aren't they like standardized? This is part of what we were talking about as budget. This should be a standardized process, this shouldn't be piecemeals. When we had a pay raise come to this board for an extra bit of work, we had $5,000 put out there as the stipend or whatever, and you couldn't even explain what the stipend was. So there wasn't a policy behind that, that was a number thrown out in the air. Three, we talked about skilled workers and how hard they are to get. Now, I just said the town clerk was an extremely good employee. How much experience did she have when she got elected? Where was she a town clerk ever? Did she ever visit the town clerk's office prior to coming into the town clerk's thing? So, no. She had the land use director that came in. How much experience did the land use director come before she came in? She had zero experience as a land use director. Not this current one, the prior one.
I can't
So,
speak to that.
I can. So when we throw the accusations back across the table, let's have our ducks in a row. Okay, that is wrong.
So Glenn, you've spoken many
I'm
times about
speaking
the
to-
35 hours. So
I'm speaking to 35 hours is the work week. I gotta tell you, as a salaried employee, I know they're all working. But I can tell you, everyone at this table that's had 40 hours has never worked a 40-hour work week in their lives. We all are expected. Tara doesn't put in 40 hours. Tara puts in 70 hours. We all understand that. But we are put on a 35-hour work week, and I will tell you, this time clock will show us who's here for 35 hours and who's not here for 35 hours. And I believe that has been fought too along the process of everybody should be clocking in and clocking out. What we're looking to is to get data, not words. Back it up with verification. It's like we talked about with these numbers and salaries and surveys and everything. The numbers I presented can put back and verified to an actual document printed online that's an approved budget. This isn't I made a phone call to somebody. This isn't as somebody gave us a survey from another town that you can't verify. These are real numbers. And what I asked is, get us the real numbers. Don't give us numbers that we can't go back and look. I call up Dan. Dan, how much do you make? Well, I make $300,000. Well, Dan says he makes $300,000, so I'm going to make this position $300,000. I can't verify Dan makes $300,000. I said I made a phone call to Dan, and Dan told me $300. I think
That call never happened.
No, I apologize. But I'm saying is we want to get it right. And the numbers were presented in your slides, the slides that came from the employees, not from ours. That number was put up there by an employee. Every employee put up there that we are underpaid. So I don't understand, without anybody knowing numbers, and I've done more research than pretty much most people in this town.
I don't know, I've done research too.
Okay, then show me the numbers and verify them. And that's what we're saying. That's why we got to the salary study. And it seems like you have the numbers, and if
Yes, I
you
do.
do have the numbers, why doesn't Tara have the numbers, and why weren't these numbers put in front of me? Because now I can continue on, because we're on the salary thing, is if we do have the survey numbers, why do we have them? Why would we allow to put in $20,000 last night if we have all these numbers? If we have them all and they're all solid and can be verified, why would we consider $20,000? How it is, and if we do have this data, how does it seem to circulate down to the department heads and not circulate up to the first
I have
selectman?
all the data, I told
But we
you
don't
that
have
last
it.
night.
We don't have it. We've been talking about this. Why don't we have it?
So Glenn, understand.
When you come to us with a $5,000 pay raise out of the midterm, which you did come to us, and we were talking about the land use directors, we never saw data, but yet we're expected to say, spend the town's money. We are the keepers of the town's money. We should say, oh yeah,
That was actually money that would be coming out of the conservation fund, so it was actual
but it's gonna go in next year's
revenue
budget.
producing that was gonna come from money that was coming from the rent increase, which hasn't been increased in many, many years, and we're under market value across the board in those rental properties. But I don't wanna go down a rental properties rabbit
Exactly,
hole
what
right
I'm
now.
saying is, we're expected to verify the numbers, but we can't tie them back to percentages, we can't tie them back to actuals, we can't tie them back to anything other than words. There is nothing we have. When you come to us and say, you know, the land use director needs $20,000 more dollars, that, you know, otherwise we're gonna lose. We don't have any numbers to say, gee, spend that. We don't have anything to tie it back to. And we're supposed to just say, okay.
I don't know why you keep using that one as an example, that was.
It didn't go through, but I'm saying these are the numbers that all we wanna do is to tie it back to an actual.
And I think the salary study will help us get there with non-biased.
But we have the data
So-
supposedly.
so
This is
can-
what I'm saying, and
There's
you're
tons
a
of
public.
data out there. I think a great analogy is hiring the consultant to do the townwide radio communication system. Could
Agreed.
you and I and the police chief and the fire chief
Agreed.
all come together and try to sort it out so that we have a new system at a price? Sure. Would it be the best route to that system? Right.
No,
Same thing
agreed.
with this.
Agreed.
Same thing with this.
We're so on the same page, agreed, but that's my frustration, we put numbers out there, and everybody says they're underpaid. Let's figure it out.
Everybody's not saying they're underpaid, Glenn. I tried to
Every
hone in on that
department
last night
came
as
up,
well.
every slide we
You've been
presented.
insinuating that
So,
someone is
okay.
fomenting the fact that everybody is underpaid. That is not the case. What we're suggesting is that there are certain areas where we're probably not on target. And how do we delineate what that is? We could compare those apples to oranges, but we need to be apples to apples. And how do you get there? You get there, from what I understand, through a salary study, not by you looking at your own
I
data.
agree.
Her looking at
I
her
agree.
data, what CCM provides, what other towns tell us. So that's
Totally-
where I'm coming from.
Totally
with the
on the
salary
same
study.
page. Again, though, but I think you missed the point last night is, we take these departments, like the tax assessor from Bethel puts their whole line item in their budget. That includes supplies, that includes salaries, that includes travel and expenses, 232. Our department is over that in salaries. So when we start comparing salaries, how do you compare everything? This is what I'm saying. So what we're saying, every department had a slide up. I mean, Every department had a slide saying underpaid, except for town clerk pretty much. We had so many slides, not everyone, but most of them did. The underlying current is, when you put it in the public's eyes, and that was in the public's eyes, it is saying, we are so not managing our staff, we're not paying our people enough money, and we're not doing this. And we're supposed to be able to give the tools to get there, and we don't even know what this is. And yet we have the department heads that seem to know these numbers, because if they didn't know these numbers, how did it get into the slide? How did it come in there unless there was some kind of thing passed around or discussed, and it wasn't, these numbers weren't brought here. And I do believe the salary study, I do believe that, that's gonna help. But yet, it was presented in us, and you're right, I opened the door, I'm gonna say that, and to get this. But this was not really brought up. Last year it was brought up to this board as, we're gonna give 10,000 to this position, 7,000 to this position, 6,000. And it wasn't even like 5%, it wasn't 3%, it wasn't 10%, it was 11.2, 8.3%. Nothing made sense. So here we are as the town stewards. How do we approve these things? How do we approve your in-between? And that's where this whole salary study came up into this light, is what tools does this board have to say, when you come to us and say, this person needs this amount of money, how do we say that's the amount of money we should give? Or do we just say 8.2% is good? All of us at this board have sit in some kind of capacity of senior management in a company. We've all been there. And these numbers don't make sense to any of us. It's not me as well. Some of these numbers never made sense to this board of how do we get there. And when you start talking pay policies and all of this, it should be pretty simple. There should be some kind of a document we go back to, or some kind of thing we go to, that we can get to the number that is thing. I don't think there's anybody at this table that wants people underpaid in this town. I don't think there's anybody at this table that feels the town employees aren't doing their jobs. All we want to do is to make sure whatever we're basing this on, that we are approving the taxpayer dollars to is real. That's all. Is it real? They're asking us to verify numbers. So I will stop. Anyone else want to comment? Because I'll open the floor up. Dan?
So, I mean, I think that this discussion tonight has been healthy. I think that the comments were healthy. I think that the response was healthy. I think that's great. I'll reiterate what I said last night, that I think that we have identified collectively an issue and haven't reached a common conclusion, because there's, as you said, there's information coming that's unverifiable, that's contradictory. Medium term, we're doing a study. We all agree on that. Long term, we're going to be addressing the results of that study. Short term, we got to take care of the employees. That's where that's my conclusion, is that we've identified a problem, emotions got heated all around. We had it out tonight, and it was very, very professional. Congratulations. Let's give people the 2%, whatever it is. Let's do the study, and let's fix it.
Ryan?
I agree. I had talked about contingency last night, about how we really need to have a policy and verify the numbers, and I'm 100% on board with what Dan just said. We just need to have the data, and it's our fiduciary responsibility for the taxpayers to spend their money the right way. So it's really short-sighted to say, oh, you know what, we'll just take that. I think we said from day one, the salary study, I'm really going to, because there's two sides of it. There's spending taxpayer money, but there's also keeping employees, and that's important, right? If we lose key employees in the town and the town doesn't function properly, it hurts everyone. So I think just having data and verifying the data and having a policy around it is just, and I agree with Dan, this is healthy discussions that happen all the time. Identify an issue, come up with a solution. It might not be an immediate solution, come up with a solution, and we all agree upon the solution, and then we implement the policy.
I mean,
Yeah, I think that was said well. It's good to hear, but also your side of, you're obviously in the HR department and know the ins and outs of everything. And, we do need to retain the good employees. We need to have a healthy work environment. I think the salary study will definitely indicate areas of improvement that we need, but I think having that data behind the decisions is what we really need to do, and that's what we do across the budget. I mean, we always look for the supportive numbers for what we pass and what we present to the voters, so I think that's a healthy way forward, and it's obviously not gonna be overly resolved tonight, but hopefully in this coming year, we can, have something to work with and go forward from there.
Mary?
And like I said, everybody agree with all well-spoken ideas. The salary study will certainly give us more confidence when random pay requests pop up, or maybe they won't be as random, they'll be more in the budget season. I think we're all on the same page that we all want to work together and do the best we can for our awesome employees who always put our townspeople first. They're always just trying to do as much as they humanly can in each department. They want to run as many programs as they can with the amount of people and staffing they have. So they're working really hard, and we just want to all work together to support them.
Brianna?
Having audio
I
problems.
know.
Yeah.
Brianna, you can't hear?
Hi, I did. I can hear. I got good sentences and chunks of it, and then it would just go away. But from what, like Dan to Ryan to you to Eileen to Mary, we've always made decisions based off of hardened facts and evidence to back up all of our decisions. And it makes perfect sense that we, like Eileen said, it's not going to be solved tonight, but we'll, do the appropriate work to solve everything, and where it lies, and we make the decisions like we always have. We always ask for backup information, and we can't just make decisions when we don't have that appropriate information.
I think it's put to bed. So,
Good.
we'll talk about putting the salary in, put the study in, and move forward. All right. Anybody else for public comment before we get into the?
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I really do, for listening. I appreciate it.
Good night, friend.
We have in here old business before new business, so we'll go to old business. The fund request we put in here, so we could get their fund request, and do you have that up, Marcia? Can you pull that up?
What are we talking about, fund requests?
Their outside
Police
fund
services.
requests, outside services?
The
Says-
police.
Hold on, police
the-
outside
the-
services fund.
So the police outside services, that was really ARPA, that, I sent an email today that wasn't that ARPA, the 39,000 for the radios,
Oh, the study.
the study?
The study,
Yep.
yes.
that,
Okay.
So when I was asking questions to the attorney today about the thing is when I pulled up tonight's agenda and I thought, oh, that's really ARPA. And he responded that we should talk about that under ARPA.
Okay. So we will table that to talk to it under ARPA
That's tomorrow night.
tomorrow night. So then we go on to the new business, which is the deliberations, and here's where let's make sure we're all in agreement with the numbers so far. And then let's draft up the proposals for tomorrow night. So when we come in tomorrow, they'll give Tara an opportunity to read it again and verify it through maybe the town attorney one last time. For the town public out there, this is the first time we've ever incorporated ARPA funding into a budget. It's not just a standard process of putting in the regular motions that we make, which are simple one paragraphs. It's a little more complicated than that. We just want to get it right. So tonight we will work on drafting that so we're all on the same page, give it a chance to get vetted, and then make the motions tomorrow night. So let's go through the,
I do the capital first because that
that's
feeds
fine,
into the
perfect.
operating.
However you want to drive, you drive. I will yield.
And then this is the one that we had talked about, we had everything on one page, but how do we get that approved and does that make it more complicated? And so this is what I drafted up today for your review, that we have their normal budget, the department requests, the adjustments, Board of Finance adjustments, and then if I just deleted the things that were paid with other sources, it doesn't show a true picture of the requests. So I thought this was the better idea, was to put paid with other sources. And then this is the proposed budget, and so this would be the normal budget. All that other stuff is taken out in this column. That If we go down to the bottom, that, because I hate doing things on the fly, that, because I add things and then I have other columns, and that if we go down to the bottom, that this number, and please double check me on this, ties out to the things that were paid with other sources, and I can pull it up, but that ties out to what was paid with other sources. And this is gonna be the bonded number. The two of these combined, the three combined, but one's zero. And then this is paid currently, which is 2,277,000, and not what I had put in before of 2,227,000. That, so those are the numbers that we've been talking about. So then the motion that was similar to last year's motion is here. Approve and recommend to it, and I tried to copy last year, but with some Excel to make sure it adds. Approve and recommend to a town meeting and referendum an amount not to exceed,
We hope it does succeed, though.
Exactly.
So, I mean, good thinking. I
Yeah.
like the positive thought process.
Not to exceed the following for the capital budget for fiscal year 22-23, the various capital projects, and then the townwide communications. This is the bonded number, 8310060, which should tie 8310060. That, and we had talked about asking in two different questions, one for the various projects and then one for the townwide communications. So I didn't know if that needed to be approved separately, so it just keeps tying out as we go through the process.
I mean, as long as we're putting it through the first one budget, I don't think it makes a difference if we separate it out of the line item.
All right.
I mean, Tara, do you have a preference? It doesn't matter.
Say that again, sorry.
Our capital total right now, we're asking for 8,000,003, the bottom line. It's separated now out into two chunks for people to see. My personal opinion is it's okay to leave it this way for the town to see it, so the 8 million makes sense to them in a little bit of a way.
Right.
But we could just put 8 million, but I think this is,
I think highlighting that one system as its own standalone is important.
right, but we don't wanna have a separate referendum, because that costs us $10,000,
Not a
so.
separate referendum, but I thought we were gonna do a separate, even if we
Yeah.
did it together, I thought we were gonna have a separate question on that one.
No.
No, I
Oh,
think we
okay.
just go with the one question.
Yeah,
We don't want to go down one of
Yeah.
I don't want one down, one up, I'd rather
Okay.
have everybody be on
Okay,
board. I
that's
think,
fine.
It's all or nothing.
now,
Yeah, they
do
can
we,
see it, but they have to vote for all of it.
is this the place we put in there that double approval process to protect the Board of Selectmen, protect us? Remember we talked about the radio, we don't know the number exactly. Do we put it, a sentence in here, or it's not necessary?
So that's why we had put in not to exceed, but we always, I think, have
We
not
always
to
have that.
exceed in there.
Yeah, we always have not to exceed. I thought we were gonna try to, this number, we all realize the urgency. We realize that it needs to be in there. And I'm not saying I don't have the answers, this is for discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I
But
thought, yeah.
we had talked about a double approval, that once they go out now to get their quotation, then we reapprove that number. And I thought we put that in for protection for all of us, because we don't have a number. And I don't know if we just
Yeah.
leave it that way
I
and
don't
it's
know that you can
understood.
move and vote that way.
I don't
think
know,
that-
I'm asking.
That's my understanding is that the motion and the actual vote is like this, and that when we present it at town hearing and put out presentations and present it to the public and have those conversations, this is the way it's gonna work. But I believe that that's
Yeah.
the right.
I'm
Present-
comfortable
that's the way I
with that
understand
too.
it.
It's like- we have a sort of an agreement here, though, that we are going to go through this together, because we don't have a number, and we see the urgencies.
One of the questions I do have on that number, because initially we were gonna bond the consultant as part of that number, has that number been pulled out of there?
So we have it as ARPA, that I could take it out of there, that, the number's pretty loose, that we don't really know, that, because we're talking about, that could potentially fit, that could potentially fit the radio, all the needs of the radio. Then originally we had talked about maybe the consultant, and then we had talked about plus the new consoles, but I can take 39,000 out of there if you want.
I mean, can't we just call it a $6 million bond? Because, I mean, really, it's gonna come way, hopefully, ideally, it's gonna come
So that's six,
further down from that
that
6
6
million.
million's made up of the purchase price of the system, or the estimate that they gave, plus 18,500 of a maintenance cost. So that's what the 6,018,500. So that's what that made up. I don't know if in that 6 million the consultant was included, but that's what the capital request had.
But then, that was early on, but then the consultant said it would be like 5.5 million to 5.9 million.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
But I can see Tara's point, actually, not to say is we took the 39, just make the numbers match. We always say we try to
Yeah.
make numbers
let
tie
me-
back.
Let me do it.
So the number ties back now,
All right, so I'm
right?
gonna
So we
take
know we
this.
moved the 39 from ARPA, so we need to show left and a right almost, I think, right? And for
Yep.
That makes sense.
simple,
All right, so I've taken,
even
the-
though it's a loose number, we still gotta follow the left and the right.
Makes sense.
all right, we call them debits and credits.
I left and right, left pocket, right pocket. Right.
So here's the 6 million,
I
and
got
here's the
schooled.
39 that's gonna go to ARPA, and then, so it's 5,979,500. So if I go over here, I like that, thank you, Tara. That's, I've already forgotten.
Actually, Tara, good catch. No, it's a
I
good
mean,
point.
these
to,
are,
no,
it's all.
it's part of what we've been doing here, though. It's a good catch. It's part of how we do
827,106,
things.
so-
So,
And then down here, 8271060 and 8271060. Okay,
Just
that's good.
because you mentioned in an email earlier today, that bottom right number, the two, I think it's supposed to be 22.7, that still says 2. On the Excel, the lower right-hand side number.
Should go to the Excel.
2277.
2277.
2277837. And this is,
Same.
Oh, okay, I'm
227,
sorry, I have my
Lots of
the,
7.
sevens.
the first
Many
time,
twos
when-
and
the
sevens.
first
Yeah, lots
time
of
I
twos and
sent it
sevens.
out, it still said 2.
Okay.
The second
okay.
time I sent it out, I fixed it.
Sorry.
And then so then the bottom part of this is that whenever we do a capital project, we want to include the total that, and so I threw this in from the last time we did one of the phases of the bonds, that to show that it's not, the streetscape isn't just 205,000. It's the total project not to exceed 3,965,766. And I tried to copy another approval for that, and so they just kind of combined them all there. So it's the gross and not the net that's approved.
So is this money going to carry us any which way we take Phase 6 northbound? Or is this dedicated just for the Laurel Hill option?
I am not.
I will
that
tell you
person.
how it was explained to me.
Okay.
Okay, and we should verify
Yeah.
this. And this is not like Glenn just spewing. This is how it was explained to me. And this was always a scary point for me, to be really honest with you, is we're approving $8,271,060. If we said that was for 2 bridges, and the bridges came in under that $8 million, and we already bonded that money, the Board of Selectmen has the right, because the town approved the number, not the projects. So the town approves that number of 8 million. So if we came in at 6, you'd still have $2 million that you could utilize towards other capital projects without going to town vote, because the town already gave you $8 million to spend on capital items. They didn't say that, yes, this is what I learned a few years ago. And again, it could be wrong, but this is real information from a conversation that I had
Yeah.
with the first selectman, I believe, is the town approves the capital dollar amount, not necessarily the projects. And that's why we've always, and I know you probably didn't know, that's why we've always tried to squeeze them down, and I always was like, let's get down, let's take out, I remember with Greg, I was to take out the contingencies,
Mhm.
because anything left on the table now is already approved capital, because it's a dollar amount. Now, you can verify that, and I could be totally wrong, and I'll claim that here, but the way it was explained to me was, we don't approve projects, we approve the capital dollar amount.
So, can I talk?
Yes, please.
I always forget that I'm not supposed to talk.
No,
That,
you are, you're part of us.
That, I did have a conversation, because one of the things that we need is a capital, policy and procedures for changing capital items, and I don't like the way we've been doing it. That, but in our call for capital, we do list various projects, because that way, if we needed to, move 10,000 from here to here, our hands aren't really tied, or if we decide, oh, we're not going to do that $1.3 million locker room because it's gonna still be $5 million, we could take that bonding and apply it to something else with everybody agreeing, but we couldn't take the 1.3 million and say, oh, we're not going back to the townspeople to spend it on, a new office for the finance director. So I think that the bonding is left open. I know that Steve and I had this disagreement where he said that, oh, he and John can move money around. The way I read the bond document, they have latitude to say, oh, we're gonna bond it, at this percent, but they can't by themselves. The bond agreement doesn't say they can move it around, and so I think that that's too broad of what you, or at least we want policy so it's not so broad.
Correct. I didn't say I totally was right, like I said, let me be clear, but this is the way it was explained to me. That we approve a dollar amount, not projects, so it can be moved around within that, because we're not approving the projects. We're not saying we approve this project. In this document, we do break out the communication system as an item, so that may be different. But various capital projects, we have a list that we tie back to it, but we don't call them out all the way, and we don't know their sound numbers. And that way it was explained was, in loose terms, again. Now it may be tighter than I interpret it as well. There may be more restrictions than I understand. But my understanding, and it always came back to, Glenn, you had the town approve the dollar amount. That dollar amount is what's approved and bonded.
Yes, and underneath that, I think that there's a statute that talks about some of this, but that's actually the different fund. But I think that we don't have policies in place to move it around, but we shouldn't have a policy that we could spend it on something else. And I put some at the bottom of one of those things today, of some ideas of what we would want to do for controls.
But I mean, isn't the purchasing process also some sort of a control on that, or not?
Yeah, but, if you gave me, it is, but if you gave me 100,000 for, a new accounting system, and I said, you know what, I want to put the 100,000 to, something else, I shouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
I could do a purchase order, and I could get that.
I have an example, I apologize for, you just rang a bell. The town roof, we approved like 120,000 for it, and Steve got it done for 40,000. And we bought a fire truck with that money or
Yep.
something.
That's right.
I don't know what we bought.
Yep.
But that's what happened. So that money, we didn't have to go to anybody for approval, we didn't have to
Yes.
go through a town meeting. We spent that money, we bought a vehicle, but I know it's in my head, that
Yeah.
the roof was approved for X with company one against a quote. Company two came in and said I could do it for Y, and we took the delta and utilized it for
That's
a
right.
truck
I remember that.
without going to town vote.
Yeah, and you didn't like that.
I
Because
don't.
I remember that.
No,
You didn't like that
and
because
that's
it never
the
went
sto-
to town vote, and
Correct.
that's where we need to have the policy.
And that's
Yeah.
what we're running into with this radio, in fairness. I mean,
Yeah.
it may be this number, and I don't want the town to think, I mean, we got told, but Marcia was right, we got presented 5.3 to 5.7 as a number. Now, we didn't want to because the capital is so low, we didn't want to under budget this, but it could very well happen on that line item that we could be a couple $100,000 under budget.
Or we get a
But-
grant,
Right,
But
so
the
that
Board
we're
of
in the same
Selectmen
boat.
themselves can't make that decision. I mean, we could collectively, I mean, yes, the Board of Finance could independently do that, but we could say we want to go through the normal process even though we know we don't have to,
Right,
right? So we could make that decision, but
we could, but I think my argument was, now that it's coming
Yeah.
back to me, is you list these 10 projects, the town looks at these 10 projects and said, all right, we're gonna give you enough money to do these 10 projects, and then all of a sudden you slip 12 in there, and they didn't get a chance to vote on 12. They were looking at the 10 line items and saying, all right, we need that townwide system, we need a playground, we need this. They weren't voting for if the department where I'm gonna pick is gonna get mad, but the Park and Rec snow removal tool, they might not have voted for that. I chose one I know, Dan. so-
No, I'm just, no.
Right.
No, that's not the reason I'm doing it.
But we didn't, if they had seen that in the line items, they might have voted differently on this budget.
So I'm
That's all.
gonna reach
So,
out.
I'm gonna,
Go ahead, we're talking, so
right,
get it
so
right.
this is the whole reason why I was advocating for not putting the number until we know it.
I get it,
But
but
I,
I don't think we can add projects, but I'm gonna email Sandy and we'll have an answer, for tomorrow night's meeting, that, I don't think that we can, I think we want a policy for small overages and underages, but I don't think we can add something, and if we could, I think we should make a policy that says we can't.
Yeah.
That, but let me email the
but you
bond-
understand what I'm saying, Dan,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what we've done in the past.
The reason I'm bringing up the question on the streetscape
Right.
phase 6 is because there's a lot going on down there with the TCD, and I'm just not so sold on the fact that we're gonna get to phase 6 in this budget cycle. So can, in my mind, for example, can we move it to phase 4? Can we move it to phase 5? How does that process work? And why are we calling out phase 6 if this is, I mean, I
so the
understand you guys
phases,
have gone through
were
the-
all approved
Yeah.
independently
yeah.
with.
Except for
with-
phase 6.
Right, exactly. All the previous phases
Ah,
were all
okay.
approved independently with state money to be matched, or our money to be matched by a greater amount of state money. And those are all independent. So this one is its own independent thing, I believe. Now,
And
it's
this
also,
one-
there's no law that says we have to do it. If the project
Okay.
goes off kilter,
Well,
we
then
don't
we
have to
we
take
don't
the
have
state
to.
money and, right,
We might lose the grant.
Right, exactly.
So I understand that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just this one.
I'll be honest with you, this one we all struggle with,
Yeah.
this phase 6, because
Yeah.
when it first came, and again, can we talk
Yeah,
about
go
this?
ahead,
I
yeah.
mean, I
I
don't
don't
wanna keep you guys here late, I promise not to, but I think it's important. We struggle with phase 6, because we didn't, even though we understood the amount of money the state was giving us is astronomical compared to the cost of the town, it's still a $205,000 cost to the town to get us to a cemetery. And do we have then the resources to get from that cemetery to where we want to go? And what are the costs of that? What's phase 7's cost? Because phase 6 for 205,000 just gets us from around Laurel Hill area to the cemetery. Now I understand, and again, I think I'm speaking for myself, and I apologize. I think we all understand the importance of the Greenway. We all get the usage of the Greenway. We all totally understand that. But the only thing this is really being built for, as my understanding, is for bicycles. Because the sidewalk is gonna extend down Federal Road past Urban Pizza and all of that, and on to New Milford that way. This is only because instead of it being 6 feet, it's 5 feet, the sidewalks.
8 feet.
8 feet. In order to call it a greenway, you need
But
an 8
it's an
feet.
ADA compliance thing too. And it's not just bicycles, it's
Okay,
an ADA
okay.
compliance issue as well. I mean, I think the other, thinking a little further forward, Greg had presented to that Westcog meeting that I think that he went to with WPCA.
Nelson.
Yeah, Nelson, and there was that possibility for the infrastructure bill to have, if you can group towns together, and if we're that much closer to the Milford border, you know, that might open up the possibilities of getting more federal money to include, to connect that streetscape up to, I mean, again, that's a guessing, but I think that puts, you know, at least shows the we have this plan in mind.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
yeah, I mean, it's,
But we struggled with it as a group.
we did
Yeah,
struggle
I
with
mean,
it.
It's
that-
a bridge to nowhere.
Yeah,
Right.
but, yeah, I mean, ultimately, and we have shown, you know, there's definitely a huge interest in the Greenway, you know, and that's been proven over and over again, especially during the pandemic when, you know, Facebook was filled with, is it ever open again? Or hasn't been plowed yet? You know, so I think that there's definitely value to that and it benefits the whole town, but I think the bigger issue is more the ADA compliance than it is just riding bikes.
And I don't think I was here that meeting, you guys
No, you
discussed
weren't,
capital,
you're right.
so I mean, I'm on board with whatever.
But we did
Y'all
all
wanna
struggle
do.
with it, because it's kind of a
Yeah.
weird spot.
And in my mind, as first select woman, the residents haven't even been pulsed yet, so there's a lot more to it than just allocating money, saying we're potentially gonna do this. There's a lot of things that have to be hashed out before we can even go down that road.
It was
No
presented to
pun
the
intended.
public though in our meetings a few times. Greg did present phase 6 in detail. I believe twice we
Yeah.
brought it to our meetings
We
because
had
we,
meeting maps.
we had a hard time grasping, even though it's, again, only, I use the word only and I apologize, for 205,000 compared to, I think, the 2 million the state was gonna give us or some, it still was 205,000 that we were struggling with of spending that capital money that maybe we need to put towards something else more critical. But if you all discussed it at the capital meeting and you were on board, I mean, you leave it in and we approve it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I.
No, it was,
I'm just trying to figure out.
I think you still all the flexibility you need not to do the project. If it doesn't turn out the right way.
Yeah, we're not obligated to
Right.
do it.
so when you put
Same
that.
thing with the 100,000, before I forget, on the conservation property at the Dunsinane. I'm just not sold that we're gonna get to that this year, based on what I know regarding the sale of that property. So is that something we actually have to include or keep earmarked in this budget, or? I mean, is that just there
That's
as
in
like a
capital too.
placeholder?
Yeah, that's in capital, but it's other open space conservation. There's a footnote on it that it probably wouldn't happen this year.
And I took that out, that, because, one, we didn't think it was far enough along. The attorney said it didn't need to go to a town meeting.
Right.
And so I took that out, but I think it's not far enough along to, I was
I mean,
trying to get everything that
I'd
might go
love
to the
see
town
that
meeting.
happen, but it's
In
just.
fairness, by the time you sort out, and again, please don't take this wrong, it's not meant to be wrong. You're 3 months into this job. You can't figure out everything in 3 months. So by the time you take these lower things like, and figure it out, we're gonna be in budget season again in reality. By the time you figure out where you wanna head, by the time you vet it and go through a few meetings and everything else, it's gonna be budget time again, and this can happen in next year's budget. I mean, I just think that some of these items that you're struggling with, you can't get to even give it your attention for another few months in reality. Because there's a lot of stuff even coming up in this budget process still for you, that item like that, if you're worried about not getting to it, you're probably not gonna get to it until the next budget season. And nobody can blame you for not getting to it. I mean, I think we take it out like Marcia said and leave it out on that one. The 205 we leave in, and if the numbers don't come right, we don't have to do it, as Dan said. I mean, we are not locked into this. It's like the boys' locker room. We're not locked into the boys' locker room. We approved it and it didn't come in at the number we expected. It came in for whatever reasons, and we don't need to get into that. It came in higher. We're still can't get it down to the number we want, so now we're looking at redoing it to make the number work. But we can still say no. If they come back to us and say, we're only gonna get inside walls for 1.4 million, you still have the right as a board of selectmen to say, we're not gonna go with this. So, and I think that's part of, Marcia brought up the other day, like double approvals on these things, when we have a number that doesn't make sense, and we make that a policy, or doesn't make sense, that's a bad number. I mean, something that we don't have concrete, is a better term probably. So we would just double approve it, and if we approved it once and it makes sense, you won't probably get turned down. It would never get to us if it didn't make sense. I believe in you and Harry and Steve that if the number didn't make sense, it would never get to us. So, does that answer
Yeah.
where you're
I
at?
just want to make sure that what we're presenting to the public is things that we're actually trying to get after. And,
Right.
you know, I don't want someone saying, oh, they're committing this 100K to this pile of rocks in the middle of Brookfield, you know. when that's not the case, you know, so we wanna
Right.
make sure what we're presenting is accurate and clear.
Right, you were gonna say something.
Going back to your question when you're ready, about what can we buy a fire truck with money that we didn't spend on the roof?
Right.
So, here's the resolution for the bonding, and we did it different with the new attorneys than we did with the old attorneys, and that's a few years ago, and that's why I'm a little fuzzy on my memory, but
These are bond attorneys.
these are bond attorneys that, and we switched bond attorneys maybe 2.5 years ago. That, so here's the resolution authorizing $5 million last year for capital projects. And then, we go down here and the capital projects, we have here. And what I had asked is, could we, have them all add up with the numbers so we are nice and tight and we show how they add to the total? And that's where they said, you don't want to do that because then that would tie your hands. You can't go one between the other. But with respect to adding something new, it says down here that, let me find it, I just had it. These are collectively referred to as 21-22 capital projects, and we can do any of the costs for the capital projects. But it doesn't seem, from just looking at this, that we could do something that's not on this list, but that's what I'm gonna
Okay.
confirm. So we couldn't take
That's
money
good
from a
point.
roof and buy a fire truck.
Maybe that was long enough.
It was prior to, probably. You've
Might
been
have
around
been
a long
prior
time,
language.
Dan, so
Might
about
have
a
been prior
year.
language.
Correct,
Could
and the language
4 years
with the
ago
new
we did
attorney
that.
is different than the language with the old
That's tighter.
attorney.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then,
that's
again,
nice
this
and
is a
clear.
good exercise. This
Yeah.
makes, thank you, this was really good.
And I'm gonna confirm that.
Yeah. that's-
No,
that's
I
fine.
just think it's important. I know that it probably was 4 years ago then that we did this, you get old sitting in the chair here.
Yeah, because the roof was before, it was in the budget
Yeah,
before my
okay.
time, so it was.
But I know that's what happened when we
Yeah.
did. I don't know exactly all the details, but, so basically we're covered then. So when we put forth our capital list, and then I believe, like we've all agreed to, is you're not necessarily tied to those projects. You can't spend the money, but if you don't do the project, it's a non-go.
Yeah,
We're not penalized, we're not anything, we just end up with bonded money that would go into, where
that
would
it
it
would
go?
reduce the next bond, so if we
Right,
look
right.
at the bottom of the schedule, I might have it I just unhide it here. If we look at the schedule, I try to reconcile down here that, here's other things that we've approved for bonding, we haven't bonded yet. And then here's what we did approve for bonding that we didn't need on those projects. That, whereas in the cash for capital non-recurring fund, that extra money we could reassign, or we could bring into the general fund as we're talking about
Right.
doing. This one, because it's bonded, we just can't take it and move it into the general fund. We have to account for it in another bond.
I'm
Because
sorry
that's
about
gotta
the
be in separate
redundancy. I feel
language.
like you've explained this to me.
Because the language says you can't do that, so the language says it's gotta be for those specific projects, so there's gotta be other language in there that says unspent money can be,
So we reconcile all that when we do the offering statement.
Yep.
That, there's a bunch of worksheets we fill out that what have you not spent from prior things, what have you spent, to make sure that we're not breaking any tax rules,
Yep.
correct?
So it's covered.
You know, I just,
Go ahead, ask the
If-
questions, let's get it right, this is a
yeah,
great
so, I mean,
conversation.
so legally, it doesn't, in the legal doc, it says you can't do that. I'm struggling with a tax form
So-
allows you to do that.
So we're not, so we've approved each of these projects. So what that one, it's not that we're moving it to a project we haven't approved. Here we need $8.2 million of bonding. Plus, we had some that we never took out from here. We never took because we do it in round numbers. We didn't take this out, we didn't take this out. But we had some bonding that we didn't need. So this isn't, this is just saying, we're not gonna bond, or that we've got authorized but unissued 8.2 million of bonds. We've authorized each of these projects, but we're not gonna take the total of 9.1 million out in bonding because we took some bonding out and it goes, we can take out $736,000 less.
So with the new project would still be on an offering, correct? The new project.
Correct, they would
Okay,
still
so
all be on the
I'm good,
offering
I'm
document.
good.
It's just that we already have this cash and,
Got it. Then You're just reallocating it, basically.
correct.
I see what you're saying.
To the new projects
To the
that
new
are
project.
specifically laid out.
And they're specifically laid,
That
if they
are
weren't
approved
laid
in the
out, then I
budget.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
good.
So
But
we're
since they're laid
saying
out-
we're gonna do these next 10 projects, this money wasn't used on the prior 10, so we can only use this for the next new 10 as part of an offset to the amount of money we need.
Yeah.
A simplified form.
Yeah, if they weren't listed there,
Right.
that's the problem.
Correct, we can't do them that weren't listed, we just, and I think I have
You
a little
understand that, Annie?
reconciliation.
Mary, are you good with that? Brianna, are you good with that explanation? I sort of got it just
Yeah.
now, so, but I want to make sure you're all comfortable. Tara, do you?
Yeah, and I apologize for any redundancy. I know Marcia's
Not at all.
explained it to me in another fashion,
No,
in a
this
different
is
way,
open and
saying
this
the same
is-
thing.
Good
Not
for
this.
all of us to go through this, to make sure we can all justify what we're backing.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing if I have something I can find here quickly that, these are all the worksheets that we fill out for the offering statement.
The good thing is, look at all the backup documentation that's here, so I mean, it's all tied back to something.
Yep.
This is all we're supposed to do, is be able to tie it back, right? You understand to tie it back.
The auditors want paying to be able to support your numbers.
Such a pain in the ass.
We're on video, on video.
Just auditors in general. I can find it, that we do a reconciliation as part of,
You're just explaining it and being able to go find it, even if you can't find it means you've done the backup, it's there. We can get to it. So let's go back to the sheet again. Let's go back to a resolution, please.
alright.
Not that one.
Not that one. Alright, so,
So let's go back to your last paragraph. The 205 is included in the 2.291,
yes,
correct?
yes.
But when we approve this, because we now have to approve this, are we approving this now within this budget? But we haven't approved the whole project of 3.965. We have not made a motion to approve like you said, we would generally make a motion that the town would put in $205,000 of money, not bonded it. We say $205,000 worth of funding to match the street safe fees. The total project and the amount would not exceed. That would be the motion the Board of Finance would make. We have not made that motion yet at the Board of Finance meeting. So when we put this 205 into the budget, it's going in as 205.
And that's where this, the bottom of this comes in, is to make the rest of the motion, that we, because we have the 205 in here, that, do we want to do it as a separate motion, take the 205 out of the capital budget? We can do either one.
If it's legal for us to state it in this statement like it is, we're approving the project at a total not to exceed, the streetscape 6 not to exceed 3965776 with the town's portion to be 205. I don't see why we couldn't make the approval in both the doc in one swoop. I mean, it's listed there, it's called out, the numbers are there, it outlines it.
Is this a new addition to this motion, or
No,
did you
there
guys approve streetscape and other budgets?
We do it on its own.
They've always
So they
been
come to
off
us
cycle.
anytime during the year, they'll come to us. So it may come to us in September, even after the budget's passed. Steve, or the
Right.
prior first
Right.
select
Right,
woman,
yeah.
woman would come to us and say, we have a project, we have grant out there, we have to do this. So we would work through it on a standalone.
Yeah, and it would be that language at a time.
And it would be that language.
And the unintended consequences of moving all of these into one document, into doing it just one time a year instead of, throughout the year, is now we have to make a little change here.
Yep.
that We want to do.
We struggled when it first came to us, like I said, we struggled the second time it came to us. Then obviously, when y'all talked about it, you thought it was a great idea, which I'm on board with. No, I'm on board. We're a team here. I'm totally on board. I just wasn't part of that, but I mean, if it got voted in, it's voted in. We're a group. And I'm behind it if we voted it in. So I think we could do it here. This is just, the timing for us has never happened this way before. We usually have approved this before or after a budget process. That 205 would have been a standalone.
Yep.
And we did review it with the attorney, but we can review it again one more time tomorrow with the attorney.
I'm good with it, because it's gonna pass anyway, so I mean, let's pass it then. We'll vote on it then. If it passes, it passes. So this is for tomorrow night.
So this is the capital that, for tomorrow night.
Yep.
And then we have, we carry this, let's see, which one is, here. We carry the cash portion, here, which is 2,277,837. Down to here, 2,277,837. And then we have the other stuff that is 7,789,1,649. And then here it is 7,789,1,649, with the different categories that add up to that, and this is an embedded Excel that,
All right, let's wait, before we go any further, I apologize.
The contingency for inflation is not in this number.
it is not in this number, and then, you wanted a methodology, to figure that out. You know, methodology to calculate an unknown.
Sorry.
There's the crystal ball.
Where did I go here?
But it's no longer an unknown if we have a number, then it's a known number.
But it's,
We're trying to.
yeah, what, going through that, many had pointed out, not everything is going to need, and you only wanted it on that budget, not on ARPA or any of the other numbers. So I just wanted to try and lay out what I thought should have a potential for inflation and what I thought shouldn't, like a reserve, that it's just an estimate anyway. It's not going to be spent this year. This was such a broad estimate that
Yep,
it's
agreed. Totally agree with the logic.
this is not construction. That
Okay.
this is a broad estimate that 20 Station Road, and this is the consultant, the ABC grant. The two vehicles are in the inflation calculation. That this is just a reserve. The retaining wall is in the inflation calculation. The paving, to your point that it is an estimate, well, he has a methodology of what he's gonna spend it on. I did put it in because, as I understand it, the asphalt goes with fuel, and fuel is up 85%, so I erred on the side of putting it in. I confirmed that Streetscape Phase 6, this number has a contingency for both our portion and their portion, according to Greg. The vehicles, I put in the contingency calculation. The vehicles in all of this is in. The bleacher replacement, she's doing $20,000 worth, so I didn't put it in there. This is a reserve. Our money is a reserve. It's not going to inflate, unfortunately. Paving, I confirmed with the Board of Ed, that they, or the officials, that it's up to that dollar amount, that 700,000, that's a broad estimate, we know it's 500 to 700, so I didn't put that one in, even though it is construction. Seminar seating is a fixed amount, they wanted to do it all. Cafeteria floor, fixed amount, they wanted to do it all. So that's how the allocation here is that 3 million would be subject to the inflation calculation and 7 million would not. That these 3 minus these 2 equals 0, that's what we want. And then trying to find a number that I went to the government finance officer's best practices, and they gave a list that there's this construction index, it was a few years old, this their best practice. Then there's all sorts of different inflationary numbers. The one that seemed to look best was a construction index. There's a construction index and a building index. The difference is construction index includes labor and the building index does not include labor. They're both done by the same company, and I could not get to that number without paying. So that was out. And I did see a really nice article from Arcadis, that is who we use for our construction managers. It listed everything I was looking for, but it was in the UK. I reached out to Arcadis to say, do you have one of these for United States? No, they don't. But they did say that they're using 8% this year. They generally use 3%. I thought we should use the difference between the two because we would always have something, although some departments used to put it in their numbers. So I took 8% minus 3%, which is 5%, multiplied it times the 3.2, which gives us 164. You had talked yesterday, maybe we fund 50% of it, or
less, or, you know, that's
Okay,
the
but
big
before
number.
you go to that, the tarring program or the paving program of 1.318 is not necessarily a full purchase of 1.318. That could be adjusted down if we don't have the funds to get there. We could say we're not gonna do this one road, or we're gonna, instead of fully paving, we're gonna skim coat this road. So that's 65,000 of your 164, I believe.
Yep.
Right? So now that number's down to 100,000. So now we're talking the 50% of 100,000 is really a $50,000
And-
nut that we're
And I
gonna
wasn't
cover.
just saying 50%, I was just trying to throw a number out there that we can all agree on.
Right.
And I just want to understand the risk. I mean, I like the point that we can fund this with capital non-recurring. Like, I don't,
Right.
not necessarily need to put something in the budget. I think we all, as a board, need to understand what our risk is, right? And if we're comfortable with not
Right.
funding the contingency and just understanding the risk.
This was a great document, I think. It showed a lot of the risk. I say, but 65,000 of it we have control over, Ralph has control over, to a point of we don't fully pave this road, or we, Mary, your thoughts? I mean, you think that logic works?
Yeah.
That's an item we can still control. A car, if we buy it and it gets higher, we can't control necessarily, or supplies we need, we can't necessarily control to the point. I don't think we need to add any, because I think if we're down to 50, it becomes control points. Then it becomes a board of selectmen control points. Like if it gets crazy, you make a decision of, we're not doing this. If someone came to you for an item for 10,000 and it's at 30,000 now, the control point is, we just can't do this right now. And that would take out chunks of this, I believe. We have enough in our contingency, the non-reoccurring capital, we do have money, so again, stop me if I'm speaking out of school team, please. But I think we have enough in here to cover that amount.
But I do think that it would be helpful for the selectmen, or Tara, because it's never gone to the selectmen before, if we had, until we get a formal policy, if we have a person's agreement that would talk about what would happen, what are your expectations that if, all right, this comes in at 5% over, is it, do you think it's appropriate for the first selectman to make those adjustments? Do you want it to go to the board of selectmen? I like it going to at least the board of selectmen, so there's documentation of the decision, where it's going to, where it's coming from. Do you want it to rise up to your level? Is a threshold that you want it to rise up to your level? So I just think with the change of administration, we should have some sort of an idea, until we get that policy of, what are you thinking?
All right. Who wants to take a first stab at that? So I don't monopolize.
I think threshold makes sense. Certain threshold, you know, I mean, I don't know, we can all debate that threshold, but, you know, we think inflation, say Marshall's 5%, if it's north of 10, maybe that's something that comes to, and I think it should always probably go to the Board of Selectmen, I agree with you, Marcia, but I think if it's higher than that, and then, you know, to have second control, you have Board of Finance.
So I had used your numbers from last night, 10%, that, or 20,000, whichever is less, because if the radios come in 10% over, you want that to
Yeah.
come back to you. That, and we would have to be able to find it too. I mean, we're talking about a transfer and not an addition, so there would have to be something that's under, so that would, you know, help us that we're not doing the radios, because we're not finding that much that's under.
And transfers have a threshold that have to come to us anyway.
By
The
charter,
general
right,
fund.
there's a certain amount, yes.
In the general fund, there's a certain amount, this,
But even interdepartment,
but this is capital.
this is all in capital.
This is all in
Okay.
capital.
Okay.
We haven't applied that transfer thing to capital
Yeah,
before.
gotcha. So I would only add that, what Ryan was referring to are for spot purchases, not for things that are recurring at all. We're hitting the threshold, but we have the 10% cushion, like the paving, for instance. It got, anything that is a kind of a continuous purchase is flat at the
Yeah.
cap. Anything that's a one-time purchase, I was thinking 5%, 10%.
Yeah, no, I'm good with 5%, that's fine.
Mary,
Yeah, whatever number you're most comfortable with.
Eileen,
Um,
I like the 5% or a dollar amount, whatever is.
Brianna,
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a really good idea.
So 5% or 10,000,
Well-
whichever is less.
I don't think we put it in the budget here. I
Right,
think
yeah.
if we talk
No.
about this
Right.
outside of the budget,
Yep.
I think that we have to put faith in our Board of Selectmen in the interim until we get this in place, but I think it's a great discussion to have. I think it takes pressure off the Board of Selectmen in a way as well, that if we do have this, again, a policy in place, that it's not a decision that has to be made by 3 people, it can be made by more people, which gives, a good idea is a good idea is a good idea in the big picture. But, right, so I think we'll do that in the summertime sometime when we have time, even if we have to have a special meeting, we have new administration. Obviously, the new administration is gonna wanna maybe put new policies in place or strengthen policies. There's a charter revision that's gonna happen as well. Is this part of the charter revision process that gets put in the charter? I don't know. Please don't take it that way, but I'm saying, I think this is a discussion. I think we have the understanding right now where we all sit, we're approving it as it is. We don't wanna put the burden on the taxpayers at this point, because again, you've been very conscious of that. And we've tried to also be that conscious and follow your lead, is we don't put any more money in. We have the agreement here that if it gets out of whack, we're gonna come to an agreement amongst us, and then we'll put a policy in place. How does that sound to everybody? Go ahead.
I like that a lot, whether we call it control points or threshold or spending cap, whatever it is, but also taking it maybe one step further based on what the school did yesterday with the spending freeze, and I don't know what that would look like, but I mean, I think we need to be ready.
That's
for-
always something that you can institute.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
completely
don't
under
even
your
know where
control.
that's in the charter, but.
That's
That's just budgeting.
management. You say
Yeah.
you're not allowed to spend anything.
Mhm.
That's
That
good.
is, and what
I
you'll
mean,
see in
if the
our,
balloon goes up, we've gotta be ready.
Yeah, I
in
did say that, I was
fairness,
thinking the same thing.
I'm sorry.
No,
I
go,
apologize.
go.
In fairness, you haven't gotten to that stage because you've been just here, but we do see the percentages on Marcia's budget when she presents. We're in budget season now for the last 2 months, so we really haven't had a true meeting since you've been here. But generally, we see the percentages in the column of used budget. Marcia also highlights some budgets coming out the gate are already 100% spent because you paid for the year up front. So you're gonna look at a line item and say, we're 100% spent, we're in March. It's because she has 2 payments, or 50%, we have 2 payments. And generally, as we get into the budget process, Marcia highlights to both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, we are running high on this budget. And then we managed through that process. So the Board of Ed reached a point where their numbers went over a threshold and they instituted a freeze. You and Harry and Steve will have that same option, but Marcia does present this on a monthly basis. Marcia highlights the numbers that we need to look at. So she might show us 1,000 numbers, but 10 of them she has highlighted or a notation to the right. And so I think that you won't fall into that without knowing it's coming. Okay? Am I, Marcia, correct?
Yes, and next week we've got budget meetings for 3 solid days that, where we meet with each of the departments. So if we come in and we're meeting with each of them, we know that Ralph's gonna need, so usually they say, oh, I need a little bit more here, but I can take it from here, because we've got 15 different sub-departments where the Board of Ed has 3, 4 for each of the schools. And so, if they start to say that, oh, I can't cover it, like, we've got an issue with overtime for snow plowing, that if Ralph says, we know that Mary can't cover it in her budget. If Ralph says, I can't cover it in my budget, then we say, okay, well, how much is that? What do we know that we have? And now if we've got every department saying, I've got this and can't cover it in my budget, then we're gonna have to look at that and decide, because we haven't done it on our side since I've been here before, thanks to COVID, that we're gonna have to decide what are we gonna cover it with, and if we do a freeze, then we'll have to say, what line items are we gonna freeze? That, so they have like 10 different categories that they freeze, that they can still do special ed tuition and transportation and stuff. So that's what we'll have to do.
But also, we do have, and Marcia coined a term, and it was for code, mostly a fluid budget.
A what?
So, a fluid budget.
Fluid.
So you do transfers within the year. So you would analyze this pretty much on a monthly basis where you stand. We don't play catch up at the end of the year. We address the problem within the month. So if you do have an overrun in a department, you come to us for an appropriation, and Marcia gives us the 5 line items that this comes out of. And generally, the 5 line items that Marcia gives us are line items that are not in jeopardy that we're gonna have to replace those line items the following month. They make sense on how the economy went, or what bills came up, or what bills didn't come up, or what, what changed in the economic environment. And then we go pretty much monthly, right, on transfers as a group. Marcia will say, we're short 20,000 in this area, but we're gonna take 7,000 from here because something changed in our budget process from the time we budgeted to now. A policy changed and we have 5,000 extra, we'll take that. So I think you'll be well ahead of that curve at all times.
And for the new people, we generally try to do that quarterly, and so that's why we have quarterly meetings. And now, once we get to April, we'll we have these budget meetings next week, so we can do transfers at the April meetings. And then sometimes, as we get to the end, we have to do transfers monthly. And the reason for that is part of our controls to stay under budget is that they can't do a purchase order until they have the money. And so we need to be able to transfer them, and so if you don't have money in your budget for a $1,000 purchase order, it stops. And so we have to keep, catching up, and so it happens more frequently at the end to get those purchase orders and keep those controls in place.
Thank you.
So back to that now, we're all comfortable that we can manage that inflation in somehow, some way, or we're not comfortable. Dan, are you comfortable?
I am.
Ryan, are you comfortable? Mary, Eileen, Brianna? Okay, so we're comfortable. So Brianna? Yeah, okay. So we're going back to the original document then. No numbers are changing.
No numbers are changing.
Well, one number changed, there was the plug on the capital, so that,
Oh, I changed that on, yes, this,
so there was $50,000 that went into the master document from the capital because it was transposed incorrectly, so that.
correct. So it hasn't changed since this afternoon when I sent that, and I updated this, so it's 77891 649, and this is 77891,649.
So what's the bottom line? What's the mill rate?
3.35.
Sorry.
Yeah,
A 3.35% increase, 25.93.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
Where'd we get that?
That was the
extra?
$50,000 transposition problem, mistake, so,
And the,
exactly.
and the 20K, right?
No, 20K was in there, it was completely the $50,000.
Yeah,
So,
it was just that.
if there's a way to
Mhm.
to address that, and I have an idea that I'm gonna throw out there.
It's your floor.
All right. On the Capitol, back to the Capitol, we have, and I know that I was the biggest advocate for reserves that there was, we have $100,000 for the track replacement reserve. We know we're gonna be bonding $2 million for that project a year from now, $100,000 is a drop in the bucket. Lower that 100 to 50, and we're back to where we were.
I have a second thought.
Okay, yeah.
That last night, if you were listening to Rochelle, she said that, oh, we've got to put money in for the plan of conservation and development into next year's budget, 23, 24. Let me double check on that.
It's for 2025.
There it is. 20, so we could have it for 24, 25, but we got money in this year's budget. What if we took that out?
Put it in for next year.
And put it in for next year, and just pulling up her presentation, because I was thinking, oh, we already have that, because she was saying, and then we would have to decide how much we do internally and how much we do externally. That,
That's not good.
Do we know what the amount for next year will be? Is it the 45 or is it?
So, I think that she said verbally 20 to, she was talking 20 to something, but we had 45 in there that was the prior land use director had put in the budget. But here we're beginning 23, 24, that, and deciding whether it's an outside firm or not. So, do we put it in, or do we take that 45,000 out? Let's see if she said anything else. She didn't give any other details.
I'm digesting.
Okay.
All right, here. So, on your field reserve, and I know I'm a big proponent of the reserves.
Yeah.
But if you're proposing to take 50,000 out, why not all of it? Why not take this 45 as well?
Mhm.
145 out. I know our thought processes have been less bonding, but when I also laid out the reserves that we gotta put in next year and the years to make it even, there's a lot of money going into reserves next year.
Yep.
So we're already gonna push this Board of Selectmen up a few $100,000 in those reserves, which is probably 0.5% we've already put in their budget if we follow a plan. So do we take the hit on the field and bond it? And I know that's against everybody's I understand, I understand exactly, we're preaching less bonding, but do we take the full hit on this, reduce the number down by 145? Now we're in a number that's smaller than 227, it's gonna be like 219 probably.
Yeah.
A number that was your original number, 319, I apologize, 319. And the 100,000 bonding, I know it goes against all of it, but
The
do we do
reason,
that?
it doesn't really go against it, I agree, because the reason to do reserves is a part of a plan to make something affordable. This is just let's lower something by 5% of what it's gonna be anyway.
Right, and that's
So-
why the trucks were
The
a
trucks make
plan.
great, exactly,
And this is more of,
yeah.
so I'd be in favor of moving the 100,000 from there,
Yep.
that reserve.
Yep.
And the 45,000.
Are we, this is a naive question,
No.
are we gonna be able to get these bonds approved if we keep bonding away?
It'll just cost more.
And
I mean, it's still AAA rated.
paying forever?
Yeah, but, I mean,
Right.
We are
We-
concerned about our AAA.
we are concerned with, yeah.
So if we're not
These
AAA?
these bonds, I'll be honest with you, to me, and I haven't read, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I just.
the police radio threw a wrench into my thought process. That was a bigger chunk than I thought. These $2 million annual bonds or $3 million annual bonds are is kind of the cost of doing business. We're bonding the right thing. Those will get
We're
done.
maintaining our assets.
Yeah,
and
those will
safety.
get done. It's the larger projects. The $6 million project that we didn't kind of factor in threw everything else into a wrench. And so does the field and
But Tara, that's where the angst came from
Yeah.
last night too. That's where I started to get shaky a little bit, and I apologize. Is when we started adding these 2.3s, the library talking about what they need, if they need a new building, the police department saying they need 3-point-something million to get accreditation for the, and I didn't say that, but it was proposed to us like $3 million for the building addition.
Yeah.
So when you start putting these numbers into a thought process, it's, everybody gives you numbers in bits and pieces, and I guess that's what this board looks at. It's only 2 million, yeah, but they want 3, they want 5, Harry wants 10, now it's 15, 16, so
Yeah.
this is where we get angst. And your question was excellent, and it hit the point, is we gotta be careful of it. But I don't think, like Dan said, this one makes the difference, this deal breaker. I would say putting in a $20 million police department or library is something that we really have to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed.
the
And-
bond markets are really formulaic. And you're this type of town, you have this type of rating, this is what the market is, this is what it's gonna cost to get it done. And that's fluid and that's dynamic, but it's very formulaic. So there's, I'm not gonna say always, but there's generally always a market for, this is for a specifically rated municipality, this is what it's gonna cost to get it done. And it just rises to the clearing price.
And
So
that's-
it'll be available if we need it, just not everything on paper.
And that's the importance of why we keep our general fund up
Right,
too. It's one of those
exactly.
formulations. That's why
That's exactly
when
right.
people go to you and say, why don't you use the general fund to offset the taxes? And it's a valid point. There's underlying currents that will change everything when we go to borrow. And each one is formulated like Dan said, so we try to take out those variables. It's like funding OPEB. As much as it is, it's just one of those things that fits in formulas that if we do it, it allows us to get cheaper rates, it allows us to do more with the money. And that's why we have the people we have here to try to work with Marcia and your team of what's the best way to optimize everything. So the question was good, and we were all conscious of that, and that's why, again, but I don't see the value of that 100,000 in that reserve
Yeah, I agree with that. I
versus
don't even know what you guys
what
are.
we're gonna borrow.
Sounds like it makes sense.
And to talk about borrowing costs, I mean, the Fed raised rates today, and they indicated 6 more hikes this year. So that's 175 basis points of hikes. That's priced in now to a lot of things, but it's something to think about in the future. Things, I mean, the curve is rising, right? So we've got to be conscious of that. When the spreads widen, I mean, that, you know, if you lose bond rating and spreads widen, it's going to cost the town more.
I do think as a group we're cognizant of all of this, and maybe that's why we come off as hard and come off as difficult sometimes, me especially, but we are taking all of these variables into place, and we talk to each other on individual basis all the time. Daily we talk to each other pretty much on individual basis of what do we think, how are we going to do this, what makes sense. And when we get here, it's already been thought out a little bit and has a process behind it to do what we feel is best. And we try to, like, use Marcia's thing, is try to keep it level where we can manage this, and it's manageable every year. And if we don't take into account 3 years down the road, or like even your question is, we're gonna hit a roadblock we can't climb. And we don't wanna do that as a group. We don't feel we should steer the town that way. So that's what we base a lot of stuff on. So I do think we take the 100 out. The 45 I'm okay with if you're comfortable with, and let's see where that number
Yeah.
falls.
Could I just add one thing while we're talking about maybe being hard on these things and reserves? That last night, that when Parks and Rec was here, that we said, well, they wanted 800 for a reserve, and that's not a reserve. That, but that is what we asked them to do, because originally we had it spread over 4 years. We cut it. And so, yes, it's not a reserve because it's 2 years, but this has been a long process. So they did the right thing by putting that in there. I
Agreed.
just wanted to clarify
That's
that.
fair.
All right, so, we cut 145. I'm gonna go over here.
2132,837.
Thank you for writing that down, 'cause this is the part I hate.
Yep.
Last week, AAA.
Board of Finance adjustments, get it in the right column, minus 145,000. 2132, 837. And then we come over here, 2132,837, and now we're at 3.15. Look at that.
Beautifully done.
Math is wonderful.
All right.
But it's 3.15 we're comfortable with
Yeah.
and you can run the town with.
Right.
This is the key to this thing is that you can't be handcuffed either. The Board of Ed can't be handcuffed. That we have to be able to function, support, and keep the taxpayer conscious. I mean, 0.5% of that 3.15, if you go up to the debt number, so what are we looking at? A $77 million budget. The increase in debt was 430 something. So 0.5% of that is the school, which everybody voted in unanimously, pretty much. So you're really running at a 2.6 overall increase. Because that debt was already factored in. That debt was already a given coming out the gate. You weren't escaping it. There was no way to get around it. So in reality, it's a decent budget.
Lock it up.
Yeah, lock it. I mean, sorry, Eileen, Mary, Brianna.
No, I think that's a good one. It makes sense.
Brianna, you there?
I'm here. I'm here. Yes, it makes sense. Sorry, this is so frustrating. I feel like the kid in the corner. I'm like, what did I do wrong?
It's all good. Once you're back, you're just gonna
Yeah.
run the meetings for a month or two, so don't
Oh.
worry.
We've been volunteering for you
Oh, that'll
for
be-
everything when you're on.
Wait till you do the committee, the new committees, and you're in charge of them all.
Brianna.
All in favor? Aye.
Oh, God. You guys will start having meetings without me and then vote me into committees. I'll be like, huh, what? Yeah, you were there. That was when the audio wasn't working.
So then this motion would be to approve the budget and double check the numbers. Town operations, 20,683,214. School operations, 48,666,148. Debt service, 6,264,450. Capital projects, 2,132,837. Total, 77,746,649. Mill rate, 25.88, and 3.5% increase.
3.15.
3.15, that's what I wrote, I don't know why I said something different. The 3.15% increase, over last year.
Which will, it's funny that maybe one person in town will have a 3.15% increase every year. It's very
Correct.
different, right?
No. In actuality, if you're at the average, you'll have a
That's what I mean.
3.15, right?
Right.
But if you're below, which a lot of the town
Right.
is, you're actually gonna pay
No,
less, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. I'm saying that like very few people will have an actual 3.1.
Oh, I apologize.
Right,
Yes,
but
you're
yeah,
exactly right.
right.
But I think you're gonna find the majority are
In that
probably,
range.
because the above average revals are gonna have to cover more than the ones below by dollar amounts almost, no? Percentage wise, 2% on the millions, more than 2% on $100,000. Dollars,
I think it
okay, I'm
depends if it's
thinking wrong.
median or average.
Exactly, it's
Yeah, all right, so you got me.
Yeah,
And then this doesn't change because what we took out was taken out from cash and
Yep.
not the bonded.
Yep. correct.
And then this will change tomorrow night.
Right, well, we're gonna talk about this.
Oh.
Right, so the ARPA funds, I think that we just need to vote on what's going into the budget and let the other ARPA funds be gone through again and bring to us at our next meeting.
Fair enough.
That makes
I
sense.
do have some questions on that anyway, and I think the Board of Selectmen need to probably reconvene before we,
That's what
Come
I,
back
but
to
we've
you.
agreed on what's going in the budget
yes.
already. So we can put that into these line items, approve that in.
However, the sooner the better on getting the other stuff out the door.
If you come to a meeting, we can probably, we can have a meeting for a few minutes, I'm sure, at some point.
Okay. The other thing is, did y'all see Andy's note today? Okay, so,
Right. But that's part of, you need to discuss that, and we're gonna do this in the budget, so that's, if we just approve what's going into the budget, that could be separate from the budget, right? If
Yes.
you're then allocating the ARPA funds on their own. So the way Marcia's gonna set it up now is, we're, right like that. So, what we've done is we've took out the cap, money used for the capital, we took out the money for the lost revenue. The townwide communication consultant is what we also discussed and agreed to. And the not yet allocated, the 1.346879 is up to the Board of Selectmen then to come back with a new chart, or however you wanna handle it.
most of which we've already discussed and solidified. We, I think, 75K or something. like that.
Correct, but this gives you a
Yeah.
little bit more time for the Board of Selectmen to go through what they wanna do to present.
Yeah, so in your opinion, because we've never done this before, ARPA especially, do you think that it'd be prudent to try to squeeze it in at the town meeting because we're gonna be there anyway? Is there any way we can get it done before the 29th to be able to tag on to that meeting? Or is that something you would recommend we keep separate and do another town meeting?
So we have the charter for, I don't know these rules enough, the charter for the budget says we have to do it for the annual budget says we have to notice it 10 days in advance, but I don't think that other town meetings we do, let me check on that,
I think though the urgency is that some people are in need of this money.
Yes.
That's driving the timing of it to having the same meeting. Not that to make it easier, it's a timing thing. I mean, we could have another meeting for it, and I'm all for that. But I think the point of, the first selectwoman's point is if we can get it approved on the 29th, then she can start to enact the help to the people that need it. I would say it's standalone too, but do we have another night that we could hold a town meeting? And what are the rules for town meeting? How many days a week, even for anything?
so the budget, the annual budget, we talk about 10 days. That's why Ginny's worrying about, if it's the 28th or the 29th, and when we get her this.
Right.
The
general,
But here it says procedures,
I don't think this is the annual town meeting, it would be a separate
this would be a separate one like we had
So
on
we
a
have-
couple other items in prior years.
Or
Town
5 people
meetings,
can
town-
show it.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say that 5 people vote on $5 million, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's,
No, it is the town meeting,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
the Board of Selectmen may, not less than 5 days prior to a special town meeting, remove any item, and submit the same to the voters. No, that's not what we want.
What town meetings this isn't by petition.
you know, is
Um,
there something else?
So that's 9.5, and this is, so I was just thinking down here.
So, do we need a town meeting? Wait, let's think about this. Time out, roll it back to that screen, please. The one where we had them listed out.
Oh.
Before you get it, let's go back to that screen, before you even start looking through verbiage.
Glenn, you're talking about the money.
Yeah, let's
That
talk
thing.
about this here.
Yeah,
So, what we're doing, are we
I think
in this approval, are we approving the whole $5 million at this point? Oh, well, we're saying 1.737, we're saying 1.9, we're saying 39, but we're also saying 1.346879, we're approving, it's just not assigned yet. it's not allocated yet. So the town then is approving the spending of the money. And then, otherwise, you would take out not yet allocated and just put a number in there of the total of 3 million and change.
Either way, it goes to town meeting.
But this is the town meeting that we're presenting this at, right?
Well, if this were in October, we would still have to go to town meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see what Jenny has weighed in here. Thank you for listening, Jenny. You guys all make me look so smart. Town meetings need 5 full days'
That
notice.
makes sense.
So if we lumped it in and left this as not yet allocated and called that a day as the town approval,
But then we
it's
wouldn't.
not clear on what the
Yeah.
allocation
Right,
is.
no,
Yeah,
that,
no.
I would
you're all
take
right, y'all are right. So we have to do 5 days notice, so,
It's the 29th, 5 full days, and she needs 1 overnight to get it into the paper. So let's say 6 days.
We could do,
The 23rd, she's not gonna be here, but other people know how to do it, I think.
They've been cross-trained.
Do we have an SOP on that?
Pardon me?
We need our SOP on that.
Yeah. She can write it down for us, we'll follow her. So the 23rd, is what day?
we could do this meeting next week. If you want to, it's that urgent.
So the other timeline associated factor is that it's not, again, as simple as us saying, yep, you know, if there's other processes.
Yeah.
so
We
how much
don't
time
just
do
go
you
to
think
cutting
you
the
need
check.
Good point.
to get to get that 1.346879? How long do you need to get your arms all the way around it?
I mean, it's as simple as getting Harry and Steve back in the same room and taking our votes.
Right, so if you were to, when would you have your meeting? When could you propose your meeting?
That's the other thing, I need someone, Ginny leaves Friday, so in order to get a special meeting on the books, I gotta,
I think Lisa knows how
can
to
she
do
do
it.
that? Okay.
So if you have
Or
a
somebody
special meeting
downstairs.
Monday, we could do Wednesday, is that okay for everybody, or is that
Except to
gonna
borrow another
mess
I'll
up
be,
people's
no, it
schedules?
should be back.
Florence person, right?
So Wednesday?
Wednesday, I'm traveling back Tuesday.
So,
I'm in Florida Saturday through Tuesday.
good for you.
Nice.
I may call in.
We could do calling, I mean, Brian,
So what do
5 days would be
Mary?
fine.
So what are you changing on what you've already
Wednesday's
approved?
fine for me, the 23rd.
so we have enough.
We
Dan.
just have to
I think I
relook
could get
some of
there.
these other requests,
Seven.
and then there's certain
Yeah,
things that we
7:15,
haven't.
right?
So if,
Right.
for the Andy's message, it's one item,
Pardon me?
the Andy's request. Did you see that email?
So the Board of,
How does that-
the Board of
How does that
Selectmen,
mess us up with the budget?
Unless they
Okay.
can make that call.
so the Board of
Mhm.
Selectmen approved all
So we're
these.
approving
and,
the
up
items with
here,
that 1.3469
The
assignment.
Board of
That'll
Selectmen
be assigned
approved all of
possibly by the
these.
time it goes to
So
budget
for
vote.
It doesn't,
they.
Why do we
doesn't
need
affect
to
our
add
budget
in
right
there?
now.
Why do we
No.
have to?
I'm just talking,
Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
brain is getting to the
Yeah,
point of I'm tired
There's so
and
many-
I'm just trying to make sure we're all on a
Well,
page.
why don't we word it as to cap it, you know, the top 3 items and then have
So I think-
of the 5 million that's allocated for ARPA, and then you just leave that not allocated line empty, and like you just don't even mention it.
I
So,
think we take that out.
We
We'll
ask-
Take
approve
it
the
out, and
dollar
you can just say
amount.
of the 5
So-
million.
Right?
yeah.
That's what I said earlier, right? We remove it.
procedure
I'm
that you
getting tired, I
approved
just
it.
wanna make
Yeah,
sure
no.
we're all
And
on
that,
the
just
same
like in the
page. That's why
budget
we're
stuff,
talking
you
out loud.
approved
I
it
thought
and you
that
say,
was a
oh,
great meeting.
there's a
Yeah.
change,
Yeah.
like, we found out, so we're just going through the process here.
Yeah, but I wanna throw a monkey wrench in before your process.
Okay.
Sorry, it might, we're talking about, let's take out that unassigned out of that
Yeah.
budget
If you go
line.
back up to the.
Because we're afraid that if it's in the budget line item and something happens, it will affect the budget, even though we only used it for capital and we only used it for the items, so why even mention the unassigned? We're only using the 3 whatever million of the ARPA, leave it right out of our budget process. Why does that
So
number
in
have
the-
to be in there?
In the motion that you had,
Unless
If you have a
think
good
you're-
reason, we leave it in.
Unless you think you're gonna assign any more of that.
Well, it's all pretty much already assigned,
Right.
and that's the process Shay and I were just talking about, because there's only a little minor couple
But-
of tweaks.
All
But
right,
for the
so,
budget
Potentially.
yeah,
process.
for the budget process,
So-
we leave the capital projects, lost revenue, townwide communications. So those three of the total 5 million,
and then next week,
yeah.
you approve the 1.3.
Yes, and it's standalone, so it
That,
it
yeah,
so
doesn't
it's
tie
not
back to
even
the
in-
budget anyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because it's really not in the budget, that money.
Yep. yep, and then, so we take this.
Yes.
And, oops, I'll probably take the name out there too. That,
That's the
Yeah.
amount of money we're utilizing for the budget.
so you do this as a motion tomorrow night.
Correct.
Perfect. And then there's like 1.3 million left.
Yep.
Yep.
That, the selectmen, the only reason that, and correct me if I'm wrong, do you want me to do the talking?
Sure.
Okay, that, I have a hard time not doing that. That, the Board of Selectmen did already vote on all of their stuff.
Right.
That, however, the one change that they want to make, or at least one, is they want to, after a discussion with the fire department, they want to add $1,000 here and subtract that $1,000 here.
Not exactly, it'd be a lot more than 1,000.
Oh.
It'd be 24,000
Yeah,
actually.
they want
It's 1,000
for each
per
EMS.
person.
Okay, that, they wanna add 24 there and subtract it down here, but would they have to go back, I mean, just like any other budget process, they did theirs. So like now, when we find out, oh, this is the exact health insurance number, it doesn't all go back through the process, it goes to your process and we say, oh, that we know we need X number more or less for health insurance and you make that adjustment. So would that actually have to go back to the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, or do you just make that adjustment in your call? And if it follows the same process as the other budgets, you just make
I
that.
can grasp the logic, yes. But I still think we should go back through, have your meeting Monday, and then we'll come back, we're having a meeting Wednesday. That, it's only a few days now, we're talking, you can get this money out, and it'll give you time to reassess, go exactly through, I know you just put the 21 in and nobody's arguing with you. It'll give you a few more, and we're not really delaying anything other than a week. Other than that, we're not approving it. Even if you're doing this, we're not approving it until our next budget meeting if we don't separate this. Because we're not approving it in the budget process. We have to have a separate meeting to approve this. Yes or no?
You mean a separate town meeting?
No, a separate Board of Finance
Oh,
And
meeting.
you're talking about having that Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, yes,
And then
7:15, Wednesday
On
night.
Wednesday night, you're going to approve all of this.
It'll be
Be unassigned.
They're currently unallocated.
It's currently unallocated
The 1.3 million,
Right.
which is this.
to spend. The town then, on the other hand, when they pass this budget, is approving the money that we put into the budget from ARPA, the balance, the 3 million balance. So
That's for the
we're taking
capital
that 3 million balance that we're utilizing towards the budget, it's going into the budget into play. The town votes on that. Why are you shaking your head?
Because 1.9 isn't going in this budget. The lost revenue is not in this year's budget.
But you're gonna allocate it towards the budget we had
No,
talked about.
Dan's right. Dan's right. Hold on.
We're not voting on next year's budget, anything to do with next year's budget.
Okay, we'll take that out.
So to the point of whether or not it needs to come back to the Board of Selectmen, I mean, I would like to give Harry and Steve a chance to really relook, and we might wanna use some more of that to plug into some of the proposals that did come forward that we haven't allocated yet. So on the one hand, I'm totally comfortable with you all making any final decisions on the ARPA, but I'm just one person on the board, so I don't wanna discount.
We're not gonna get in your way on that,
Right.
I think. Let's understand that. We're not trying to take control of that, so please understand that. All we're trying to do is to align this now with the budget. So when we vote on it, there's not any, it doesn't tie back. Oh, Dan's right, the 1,900 won't tie back to anything. If we
Right.
put it in this thing, it doesn't tie back. We can't say, oh, where's that 1.9 million? We're saying, well, it's in next year's budget, but it's not in next year's budget. We don't have next year's budget.
You have to have an understanding among
So-
this table that it's there.
Right, but now what we have in that appropriation is exactly what we're using towards the budget. That brings the 1.9 million down, which we'll talk about next Wednesday night. and we'll go along, again, I can't speak with them, I'm pretty sure we'll go along with the Board of Selectmen's suggestions. We'll have discussions. If we have any questions, we'll have discussions. Ultimately, you're to be sitting at the table, you can say, no, I totally disagree with that, or, oh, I hear you, we'll move some money. But I think that will be ultimately, again, Dan, Ryan, Eileen, Mary, Brianna.
Yep.
I don't think we're looking to take control of the money, we're here to support you, that's our job, is to support.
Thank you. Yeah,
We just want the
Let me-
budget to be clean, and Dan, you're absolutely right, we wanted the budget to be.
All right. So then, this would be approved tomorrow night by the Board of Finance and go into the town meeting. We have to just make sure that in the town meeting, we talk about ARPA approval. That, and, hold on, let me ask my faithful friend here, and Ginny, if we're talking about budget approval, do we need to put the dollar amounts in the 6 days, or can we say that it's down at the town clerk's office like we do with this budget?
So basically, after the approval, we still have 1.9 million hanging out there,
Right.
and then we'd have to approve it for next year's budget.
Correct.
So what we're doing is we're doing it in 3 chunks right now. We're doing it in the first chunk, what we've used towards the budget, that we've all agreed on. The second chunk is the proposals put forth by the ARPA committee that the Board of Selectmen felt needed to be funded. The third chunk is the 1.9 million that we had talked about for next year's budget
Actually,
process.
4 chunks, because the 1.9 is split between 2 years.
All right, so yes, but that's the process of what we're talking about.
Yep.
And we don't vote on approving it until we go to use it, because again, things change
So we have-
as well too, right? So that 1.9 million, and we got a windfall from some other reason, that 1.9 million could actually go to more ARPA
Right.
committee funding or utilize somewhere
I was
else.
gonna say, or on the flip side, if you have an emergency.
Correct.
We might get taken.
So we don't allocate it, it sits in that ARPA fund.
Which is.
Marcia, makes sense to you, that process? So we're allocating the first group through the budget, that's tranche 1, as we call it, what we're using for that. The second tranche would be what the Board of Selectmen and the ARPA come back to us next Wednesday. The third tranche would be what was remaining, 1.9 million. That third tranche would be what we're gonna use in the next year's budget, and then the fourth tranche is in the following year's budget. But we won't approve it until it's needed into the budget, because that gives flexibility as well if things change.
what was the fourth tranche again?
We were spreading it over 3 budget
The one,
years.
the lost revenue for the 1.9.
Oh,
Was spread over
is
2 years.
Two budget years.
But we're not gonna approve it, per se, we're gonna leave it in the ARPA account, because we don't have to spend it or approve it over time, and things do change. So again, you, and Dan said, you may have an emergency that, and we don't know what it is, obviously, but it gives us flexibility, so.
But I'll make a methodology to try and.
Right.
Exactly.
So what we're, again, so we're all in agreement. The first bunch is we're approving towards this budget. What we're gonna have in this budget are the numbers we're using towards the budget. Wednesday night, we're gonna meet to discuss that second layer of numbers that the Board of Selectmen is gonna go through, finalize it, and bring to us. The third is when we get to next year's budget. The fourth is the following year's budget.
So once you approve that third line, the question then becomes, can we take ARPA as a separate item to the town meeting on the 29th to put it to bed?
I don't think you can, if you wanna do it that way.
I don't know.
Do you need to put it to bed?
As far as getting it out to the public?
But that's your first tranche Wednesday night, right? I mean, your second tranche is Wednesday night, when we say, yeah, all those 12 projects we're on board with. Now you can release that money anytime after we approve it, right, or the town meeting?
No,
But
it
after-
still
I
has to
think it has to go to a town meeting, and then, but that gives you enough days to get it to a town meeting. And that was the whole
So
purpose
let's
of
do a
trying to move it to the
calendar.
23rd, was so that you could get it to the town meeting on the 29th.
So,
We could get it to the town meeting in anticipation of what we're going to approve. We can set the town meeting up saying this is gonna be discussed, even if we don't know the exact, I believe that's true. We don't have to have the number fully buttoned up to announce at town meeting that we're going to discuss it, because that, I think that's true.
My
so,
phone
it
friend is not.
would- so in my mind, it would become 3 items
I
on
might have
the
made that
agenda,
up.
right? 3
Sounded good.
capital,
I was voting for it.
operational, And then ARPA as a side.
Yep,
Yes.
and then if we're,
The
Making
town
a
meeting
motion.
shall not act upon any proposal except upon the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen as provided in the provisions of the charter and has not been acted upon by Board of Selectmen and approved by Board of Finance. So I don't know if we
That's
can, I
okay.
mean, it would be by the time.
Right.
However, we do have an outline of the money.
Right.
We actually have a basic outline, it's just not put into place. So at the town meeting, we could, I think, put it to bed. This is our proposed use of these funds.
We gotta, somebody's gonna challenge it if we're not done that, so we have to follow the procedure, somebody's gonna.
I know,
If
and
we're-
rightfully
but
so,
if
though.
we-
Yeah, right.
Let's not be
Yeah,
clear.
it's
I'm
like
not-
that
yeah.
tomorrow, that,
Yeah.
In which case, there's no rush to a Monday special meeting for the Board of Selectmen or a meeting for you guys on Wednesday.
well, I think that the question is, when we, on Wednesday, when we say we're gonna put this out, do we have to say, here's the list, or can we just say, and we'll talk about it? And we'll give you the list then, or the list will be so for this budget, they're not getting the details. It says in the town meeting notice, you can pick up the details down here.
Right.
So do we need details of ARPA for the town meeting notice?
See it,
It's time,
okay.
And
let's
then
find out the information, we're spinning our wheels.
if
Okay,
we're,
all right, yeah, I agree. Let's get the, you know what we want to get to. You understand what we were talking about, let's get the details, because you're right, we're gonna be talking about things that we're not quite sure of. This is so new. We have never dealt with this before, so it's so new that,
and if we're doing this, motion tomorrow night, do we just take the 39 out and do that next Wednesday, and so we have nice columns? So we just talk about capital.
you're right, because that's not going into next year's budget, that's
Right.
gonna be released
That's-
now.
Yeah, we put it in.
Again,
So,
yes, it
yeah,
follows.
we wanted to get it out early, but it's all gonna be at the same town meeting. So,
Again, that makes perfect sense, because we want to be able to tie it back to the budget. We want to be able to go to the capital and tie it back to the budget.
yeah.
Right, Dan
Yep.
and Ryan and Eileen and Mary, we wanna be able to tie the capital list back to the allocated money. So if someone were to go through it and say, you know, if they looked at that, they'd have been like, well, was it 39,000 in this year's budget? And actually, we're spending it this year.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Good
Am I
point.
missing something?
No,
Alright, I'm lost too, so.
Well, just like your 1.9 million was like a really good point, like, oh yeah, it's 39,000, same thing. Yeah.
It makes it cleaner.
And then, alright. What is, okay,
I think we're pretty much done. We can call it. I know, I would call it.
and I just wanna double check what the attorney said today.
Absolutely. You're right.
I know.
I don't know what else to say, but yeah. I like it better this way, though. I do think that we take, it's only gonna be budget related, this,
Yeah.
what we're into now. Because everything does have to tie back to attachments and the 39 we're trying to get out right away. That's part of what you wanted to do to get the radio started as a Board of Selectmen. So that's not next year's budget, that's this year's budget. So Wednesday night, we'll approve what you need to approve. You'll find out from the attorney what we can do for the putting it to bed. I know you don't want to not talk about it anymore, but you'd like to get moving on it. I used the wrong term there again. And we get it out.
Alright, so I've got a few follow-up items. One of the follow-up items from last night is tax sales. I've followed up on that. Very rarely does the tax sale, the question was, or we sell a property for $1 million, and we try to collect our 20,000 of taxes. That, the way the process works, they have 6 months to redeem the property for the most part, they do redeem the property. But if they don't, and they have $1 million property for $20,000, we get our 20, we get our fees, and then the 980,000 goes to the court. We don't get a profit on that. That
So we
was-
just redeem
Yeah.
our tax
I think
loss.
the town is the first line under it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my phone a friend Ginny, thank you, has weighed in here. The attorney needs to write the town meeting notice, I believe. I was going to have the capital town meeting notice in the paper next Wednesday at the latest. So,
And we have to sign this and get it to the town clerk by when, Friday?
so if she was gonna have the capital town meeting notice in the paper Wednesday is what she thinks is the latest, then, and she was gonna have the notice in the paper on Wednesday, you have to meet on Tuesday, well, you would have to meet on Monday.
Was that Wednesday, is the 23rd?
So Wednesday, she needs a date, so the town notice in the paper on Wednesday, she needs to get it out on Tuesday, which means you need to meet on Monday.
Which means you need to meet on Friday.
No, they can
Or-
meet Monday.
They can meet Monday before.
6
Early.
o'clock,
Yeah,
we
sure,
meet
good
at
point, that's
7
true,
and
that's true. I can't.
So
Thank you,
Monday
Jenny.
the 21st.
Unless we go with it the way it is and readdress all outstanding later.
No, let's go your way. Monday, can we meet virtually Mondays by chance? Mary, are you available 7 o'clock, 7:30? I don't think this
This
is.
Monday?
Monday the 21st.
I mean, I need time to get a special meeting in.
Oh, okay.
So we-
So Friday, you'd have 24
Or
hours.
earlier on Monday.
Great. You did 6 o'clock Monday night.
That's fair.
Oh, it's not fair. I mean, you have to agree. I don't want to dictate.
No, that's fair, I mean,
Right. We'd have to have it at 7, but could we get 4 people there? I think we're all fairly in
I can
agreement.
do
Yeah.
virtual.
So,
Yeah, I can do
Brianna's
it.
in. Ryan, are you in? I'm in. Eileen, Mary,
Yes.
and
I'll
Dan.
probably be out of pocket, but go for it.
We'll talk.
Yeah, go for it.
We'll get your
And like I
opinions.
said, we're supporting what they're gonna recommend. Yes, go for it.
So if you had your meeting at 6, we'll have our meeting at 7. To finalize it. But I mean, obviously, we talk to the attorney, make sure we can do them, we'll just finalize it. So, and then you can have the public meet, she can put the notice in Wednesday. And be done. Okay.
Okay, so if that's set in stone, I need to make sure I get the special agenda over to Diane. Because she
Yeah,
has to post
let's-
it.
Let's put the
There's a
agenda
special meeting
out.
within 24 hours.
We can cancel it, but let's put it out and go with it. And
And is it in person or virtual?
both,
Okay, perfect. And that's Monday night, March 21st at 7 to approve.
hold on,
ARPA?
Brianna, we're gonna do a joint meeting with the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen.
Can I
That's
still
a
do
good
later
idea.
though?
Thank you.
Huh?
I can do later.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 o'clock, we can do
That'll make it
7
much
joint.
easier.
Good.
7 o'clock joint and make it virtual so people can call in
Great idea.
because it's so off the cuff, nobody could plan for this meeting whatsoever. That 7 o'clock, in person with who can make it, virtual who can't, and do a joint. You good?
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
all right, it's getting late, we're all tired, especially me, so let's run down with, especially me. We are okay with the verbiage on the main motion.
Yes.
We're okay with the verbiage on the capital motion. We're okay with the new ARPA approval process here. Like, we're not approving it, but I mean for the budget. You're gonna speak to the attorneys about the items we discussed. So pretty much tomorrow night, it's just, we're pretty much ready to go. It's a final, like, everybody think about, make sure they're comfortable with the numbers. And then we're just gonna make the motions and approve along the lines. So everybody in agreement that we're there, this is what we need to have ready. So,
And just so I know, who's taking the lead on coordinating the joint special meeting on Monday?
Exactly.
would you like us to?
That would be really helpful.
That's fine, that's fine.
Thank you.
But usually Brianna and Ginny and they all talk and they make the agenda.
Just with Jen.
So, and Eileen
Yeah,
also has
Diane
been,
can help us. Okay.
yeah, so we can, I'm sorry, I'm speaking, can you help with that,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah.
Okay. We're all good, any final thoughts, questions?
But then,
No, I'm more worried about your comments first, everybody here, I need everybody here to be comfortable with what we've done. Everybody, there's nothing you feel missing that you are agonizing over? Dan,
No.
Tara, is there anything you're agonizing over right now in this budget?
I'm not agonizing at all. I feel very confident and comfortable. Thank you for all the work that you put into this to get it to where the Board of Selectmen and I felt that it was very reasonable and palatable, and you guys worked hard at doing it, whatever it is that we all did over the last couple of weeks, or that you did, I should say. So, yeah, no, I'm it's been a journey. It's been a learning experience. It's been
Oh,
hopefully what's going to be very rewarding when it passes the first time.
there you go.
Yes.
And Marcia, you're the one that sees all these numbers, are you comfortable where we're at?
as I see them properly and don't transpose them.
No, let's not go through that, but I mean, are you comfortable that we can manage through this?
Yes, the only thing that's just nagging at me is that 10 years, that should we just pull that up and look at that and see what happens with our one-time revenues? Or is 150 not, probably 150 is
We
not.
gotta be
worth it.
comfortable all the way around, so go ahead, pull it up.
Thank you.
I know Dan's gonna kick me.
I can't reach you. I can't reach you.
This is gonna cost a dinner out of somewhere. I mean,
No.
we gotta be thorough,
Let's
right?
do it.
I just want to know what we're looking at, because I like this schedule.
It's a good, I do too.
This is the first time
I've
she
grown
showed-
to love it.
All right, so what we've did up here, and I don't know.
It's too many numbers for me to even
Can
grasp
someone
right now.
read me the numbers, because I don't know when the last time I updated this, so it's the town operations,
I don't have a new one.
Do my duo.
It's a lot of numbers.
All right. So what are we looking for?
town operations for the,
20683 214
Board of Ed,
48666 148.
capital,
Capital 2132837.
and then debt service didn't
Six.
change, no, that didn't change.
Yeah,
So the total 77746,649.
Correct.
The total taxes, no, so this is 71006,464.
Correct.
All right, and so
Well,
then
that's before the tax relief. The elderly tax relief. So it's the levy 71506,464.
Yes, yes, that's kind of backwards.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, and so our one-time revenues, we didn't change, that, 746, 3.15. It does bump up next year a little bit, 3.38 maybe. Okay, I'm comfortable.
That includes the first go thrall tranche of the 1.9.
And
Yes.
next year we'll include the first part of the 1.9.
Maybe
Yes.
shuffle over.
Yeah, I just was worried that it might throw it
Yeah.
too high.
What
but,
what
but
was it
it's-
before you recall? What
Pardon
was the
me?
number for next year before you recall?
Well, let me just save this, and then I can undo.
Sorry,
Oh, no, I can't undo.
No,
That,
I'm wondering
Yeah,
what the heck you're
that's-
going
yeah, I can't undo that,
You gotta file save as something
Yeah,
else
exactly.
and
Yeah.
then
Too late.
close it out.
Too late.
well, no, because I have, I've changed those numbers. But it was 145,000 different, so if I took,
Yeah.
No, you're
No. Sorry.
Did the
It's
Board
that
of
time
Ed
we all
find the
get punched.
50,000?
Near the end.
I don't know what it was.
It's fine, don't worry about it, the
It's
number,
fine.
basically, Dan, that's what we talked about. We're gonna have a number that we're gonna have to reach into the tool bag again next
Yep.
year and figure out how to,
Yep.
the best.
But it's still reasonable to think about.
It is.
even if
It's
Yes,
not
the
a
starting,
huge-
yeah,
Yeah,
Yes, they did,
it's in there, yeah.
without touching the
So-
ippy dippy money.
Yeah, if you did.
Nice.
We'll
Where was
hopefully
that?
have some extra, go ahead.
No,
No, say, please.
We're just
Okay,
saying,
so we're
ippy
just-
dippy.
That we will have some tools in our toolbox to massage like we did this year a little bit and get the number down. I mean, the number's what it is a lot of times, there's not much you can do with it, and I think that's what everybody needs to understand the town, is like, there's not a lot of things in here other than necessities. And the number sometimes, because we voted in the school so unanimously, I mean, it wasn't like it's a school passed by 10 votes, it was a, I don't
2 to
remember.
1.
It was 2 to 1, that these are the numbers we have to face.
we just have to remember it's time
We
to pay
were,
for it.
we were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, but we voted it in as a
Yeah.
group, this
But
isn't
it-
7
but
people.
when we start to look at all the capital things
Well,
we
we
keep
could
hearing
look-
about, it's a good thing that we have the new building, that we're not trying to patch and repair these old crumbling buildings, because we're starting to hear about these
Absolutely.
other ones.
Yes,
So
there was
it was
nothing
the right
wrong with it.
decision.
We haven't
Yeah,
allocated
it was needed.
to some of the
Yeah.
capital.
All right, so we're good, we understand it. Any
And
public comment?
$1 million worth of
I just have some information.
All right, go ahead, state your name, address.
Harry Shaker, 87 Long Meadow Hill Road. I left a message for Glenn Mortone. I have not heard back from him as far as the management for the properties, and also going in and giving us an update to get them repaired to market value. I did speak with Peter McPadden. He is interested in both, in possibly looking at doing a walkthrough on the properties and giving us an update on the condition, interior and exterior, and in some type of management or oversight. So I can give either one of yous, I'll give you his number, and however we want to set up getting him the information.
I think that was discussed at the selectmen's meeting,
Yeah.
so they may not know what you're
This
talking
is-
Oh, I
about.
thought there was a joint meeting.
Assuming that.
It's okay.
It's okay, it was public comment, we're good, we don't need to, we don't need to go back on public comments.
Right.
So would you like to add anything else in your public comments?
Only that the 24,000 that we are proposing to add for the firehouse to the ARPA has not been discussed yet.
That's gonna be discussed, yeah,
Yeah,
Wednesday
special
night,
meeting.
special Monday night, meeting night, special meeting Monday night. Hearing no other public comment, is there any public comment? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn, all those, or, so I have a second?
A second.
All those in favor? Aye.